Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my second encounter with the South Korean micro brand Pitsman. It was about a year ago now that I had my first encounter with what was their second model, the thought-provokingly named Pitsman 2. Today I'm back with their third model. Can you guess what they've called it? Yes, that's right, it's the Pitsman 3. We will talk a little bit about the branding later on. Now, when they approached me a year ago, the brand owner said they wanted to be a Korean Grand Seiko, hence my thumbnail at the time. My conclusion was that as good as the watch was, they were more of a Korean Christopher Ward than anything further up the food chain. However, if you have ever handled a Christopher Ward, you know that's a compliment rather than a criticism. Now, this Pitsman 3 is an automatic chronograph that takes some of its styling cues from classic chronos such as the Daytona and the Zenith Chronomaster, but for a fraction of the cost of those two watches. Don't get me wrong, it's not a dollar dazzler today, we're well north of $1,000 US, but I think the build quality on offer here more than justifies the price, as does the movement choice. This watch contains a Seiko NE88, also labelled as a Seiko 8R. That is one rung down from the movements they use in Grand Seikos, and features in Seikos costing well north of $3,000, twice the price of the Pitsman. So, well made, yes, well priced for what they're offering, but is there enough originality here? And does the brand have enough cachet to stop you spending your money elsewhere? Let's flip the camera and find out. All right, let's get into it, but before we do, I'm sure you saw the pop-up in the intro, but just so we're clear, this video is sponsored by Pitsman. I will therefore, of course, leave a link to the three on their website in the description of the video. In fact, let's have a look at their website now and discuss price. The price of these threes is $1,299 until the end of March, so you've got a couple of days to get them at that reduced rate. They had $100 until the end of April, and then the regular RRP is going to be $1,499, either for the Panda or for the ice blue version. Now, before you spit your chips at the prospect of a Seiko-powered micro brand costing $1,500, have a look at how much an NE88 costs. $750 US. This is a serious movement. This is a very distant cousin of the NH35. I will of course talk about the movement later on, but for now let's talk about the packaging. I think the packaging is quite nice. It ought to be quite nice considering we're well north of $1,000 today. This is going head to head with Christopher Ward, with Oris, dare I say it, with Monta as well, some of the kind of premium micros. So it should be nice packaging. Nice little leatherette pouch here, and in the bottom we have a tray featuring a paper warranty card. It's a 2-year warranty, 3 years might have been nicer to be honest. There's a little paper instruction manual, and there are a couple of half links that I have removed. Now, these two, they're going to come back later on. This is all I had to remove to size it up for my 7-inch wrist. So if you have a 7.5-inch wrist or above, you're out of luck. Secondly, that's what we're sizing today. We're sizing in half links because there are no micro adjustments on the clasp itself. Yeah, like I said, more on that later. And there it is. Clearly this one has taken a number of styling cues from both the Daytona and from the Zenith Chronomaster, but no bad thing in my opinion. It's a great looking watch. That's a lovely enamel dial. The sky blue one is also really nice looking, and they've added a little bit of color here and there. You may remember this one appeared on the channel before. I took it to Tasmania in my What's in the Watch Roll edition about 3 weeks or so ago. I wore it as my main watch down there in Tassie, and I really came to appreciate just a little bits of color, the chronograph on some of the sub-registers, the date complication, the tip of the chrono hand, one of the chrono pushers, etc. I think Panda's a great color version, but they always benefit from just a little splash of color here and there. And this one definitely gets it. All right, in terms of dimensions then, yeah, perhaps a little larger than the Daytona, which is a 40. This one comes in at 40.8 mil in diameter, 30.3 mil thick, 47 mil lug to lug exactly. 20mm between the lugs. Now, there is a taper down to 17 at the clasp. As you can see here though, that's what I was saying, there's no adjustment whatsoever in the clasp. This one, sized up for my 7-inch wrist, weighs a not inconsiderable 158 grams. Water resistance, 50 meters only today. There is a piece of dead flat sapphire crystal with a decent amount of anti-reflective undercoating underneath it. And as discussed, the movement in the back is a Seiko NE88, which we don't get to see today, unfortunately, because of a solid screw-on stainless steel case back. Now, it is one of those ones that will require a ball or a slightly unusual tool for the removal thereof. Now, the pattern in the center, I've been trying to convince myself that those are classic Formula One circuits, Suzuka, Interlagos, Silverstone, but unfortunately, I don't think they are. I think they're just squiggly lines. If someone can tell me anything different, I would be delighted. But as it is, yeah, I don't really get what they've tried to do there. Bit of a shame we don't get to see the movement though, because it is attractive in a Seiko kind of way. These are known as 8R48s when they appear inside Seiko Group products, by the way. 45-hour power reserve, 34 joules, bidirectional winding, hand winding and hacking of course. And it's a column wheel chronograph with a vertical clutch, as you can see from this exploded diagram here. It is quite thick though at 7.6mm, hence why this one pushes above 13mm as a whole. And just in case you weren't convinced by its seriousness already, it's a 12-hour chronograph. None of your 30 or 60 minutes here, thank you very much. So the sub-register at the 3 o'clock there is a small second indicator. Over at the 9 is a 30-minute timer, and then down there we count up to 12 hours. Plus there's a date complication down there at the 6 again in red. I like that. I think it's quite neat. It's hard to get a tri-compact chronograph and incorporate a date neatly. You can sometimes see it wedged awkwardly in at 4:30. Sometimes other brands just don't bother at all. I think for an auto chrono with a date complication and 3 sub-registers, that is pretty good. 1 press of the top pusher to start, 1 to stop, 1 to reset, all pretty good stuff. And it feels really nice, really snappy, very positive action on the stop, start and reset. And I must say, just like the 2, the build quality of this thing is outstanding. I'm not sure if these are made in Korea itself, but wherever they're made, they know what they're doing. It is very well put together. At 160 grams, it's certainly a stout feeling watch, but yeah, it feels very solid and 0 end-link rattle. You know when you're not getting a hair of end-link rattle, you're dealing with a rather well-made watch. Now this is a fixed ceramic high polished tachymeter scale if you ever intend to use such a thing. As discussed, there's a little red ring around the top pusher, nothing on the bottom pusher, and that Pittsman logo on the crown there at the 3 o'clock. The bracelet is a straight carryover from the Pittsman 2, I believe. Please forgive the dirt here and there. I have worn this one quite extensively. It's probably had a good week, 10 days of exclusive wrist time, as you can tell by some of the scratches here and there on it. I do wear these watches before I review them, I promise you. Not a bad looking bracelet, 3-link oyster style, brushed upper surfaces, high polished edges, giving some extra bling here and there, particularly when the bracelet is in motion. Screw links hold it all together. I did have a little bit of an issue with one of the screws though. I had to screw it in a couple of times before I get a good fit. That's why Loctite is always recommended if you are permanently sizing a bracelet for your wrist. Double pushers, Pittsman brand name etched into the clasp there, but as discussed, no adjustment whatsoever on the clasp. It does hold it nice and securely. It is comfortable. There's plenty of chamfered edges. It's all very smooth. But yeah, I was sizing to the full length. I found I was wearing it loose rather than tight just to give me a bit of extra breathing room. Not always ideal with nearly 160 grams on your wrist though. Dial on hands, I think the dial on hands on this watch are a real standout. Very, very nicely done, looks great under macro, and the more you look, the more details you find on this one. There's plenty of depth from an angled chapter ring, you've got recessed sub-registers, little high polished silver surrounds to those sub-registers, great handset, great indices, multifaceted, 4 layers of depth if you include the date complication as well. So yeah, a lot going on. Nice and crisply printed all on that enamel too. So classic Panda layout, the 3 sub-registers in black against the white enamel dial. The ice blue one does look good though if you want a little bit of colour, if you want something perhaps a little bit more modern than this. Multifaceted indices, all including Lume. And as I said, little touches of colour here and there. 2 of the 3 sub-registers, the 12-hour and the 30-minute sub-register, feature red. Chronograph is printed underneath the Pitsman logo, the Pitsman brand name, the city they're based in, Seoul in South Korea, and automatic, so there's plenty of verbiage above the pinion. The date complication down there in red also, I think, a very nice touch indeed. It's a high polished silver handset with beveled edges, so again, plenty of different angles, plenty of different surfaces, plenty of complexity to those as well. Now they are semi-skeletonized, in fact, probably more than half of each of the hands is see-through. I guess that is so that you can see the sub-register hands when the chronograph is in operation. The hands would normally be fouling them, but there is a kind of downside to that. There's not as much lume and there isn't quite as much legibility. Again, more on that a bit later on. But yeah, good looking dial overall, looks great in sunlight as you can see here. It looks like a lot of thought, a lot of tension, and rather a lot of money has gone into its production. That's it on wrist. You know my wrist size by now. It's an average size 7-inch wrist. So if you have an average size wrist, this is roughly what the Pitsman 3 will look like on your wrist. It will look good on your wrist. It is a good looking watch. Simple, clean, Panda style layout, and it looks like there's a bit of money on your wrist. I must say, I did enjoy the time that I spent with it in Tassie. I felt like I had a real quality watch on my wrist because this is a really nice, high quality watch. Legibility though is variable. Silver hands against the white dial always struggle a little bit, and because they've chosen to semi-skeletonize the hour hand and the minute hand, there's even less of that white section to stand out and catch the eye. That will be featuring in the moans and niggles section. In fact, let's get on with the moans and niggles section. With an RRP of $1,500, you're setting the bar pretty high for yourself. And aspiring to be a Korean Grand Seiko, you're also setting the bar pretty high for yourself. I think this watch does really well in some areas. Dial hands all look beautiful, really feel solid, and I think it looks expensive. It looks like you have spent a bit of cash on your watch. However, I think there are some areas that it lets itself down. It really should do better for the price they're charging. And the lume is one of them. There is some lume on the hands and the indices, but not a lot, and the application is particularly poor on the hands. It doesn't look inspiring initially. Those hands look a little grainy, which is never a good sign, and when I turn the speed up, they vanish all too quickly. That is poor lume for any watch with this price tag. As discussed, this is a carryover bracelet from the Pitsman 2. I think they should have done something a bit different. This watch is 20% heavier than the Pitsman 2. It is nearly 30 grams heavier. I think it needs a couple of holes of micro adjust. You're going to be wearing it loose as a consequence. 160 grams is maybe a bit too much weight to have flopping up and down your wrist, in my opinion anyway. And 50 meters of water resistance is 50 meters too few. I know the Navitimer and the Speedmaster classic chronographs only have 30 meters, but the Daytona and the Zenith both have 100. I'd be much happier recommending this one if it had 100 itself. And then there's that legibility issue. Have a look at the Pitsman in the middle. It's the only one of these 3 chronos with skeletonized hands. I understand why they did it, but the hands are the least distinct of the 3 as a consequence. And finally, there is that thorny issue of branding. Pitsman is a slightly unusual name for a South Korean brand, or at least it is to my ear, and the website's no help. There's not much of a backstory other than their ambition to sell high quality timepieces, which I suppose is fair enough. But calling your watches 1, then 2, then 3 is about as basic as it gets. Look, I know Dorenzo does the same, but at least they carry over a unique look between their different designs. Looking at the 3 Pitsmans so far side by side, I'm struggling to see a pattern emerging. I think the more you spend on a watch, the more it has to be something a little beyond the watch itself. And at the moment, Pitsman is struggling in that area. So by no means a 2 thumbs down for the Pitsman 3 today, but also by no means a 2 thumbs up. Clearly they have ambitions as a brand, and good on them for having ambitions as a brand. I think their build quality more than marries up with those ambitions. They really know how to make a high quality watch from the two that I've looked at. There's just a little something lacking at the moment in terms of branding, and this one had a little something lacking in terms of specifications as well. So there you have it, rock solid build quality and just enough styling cues of its own to separate it from the big boys, but it could definitely do with a 3.1 if you see what I mean. It needs more water resistance and it needs more bracelet adjustment. And dare I say it, it needs a bit more of a story before it can really compete with the other mid-tier micros that it's pitching itself against. Roll on the Pittsman 4, although I really hope they call it something else. While you're here, you should watch my review of the Pittsman 2, or what about a Christopher Ward with similar build quality for similar money. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. I'll see you again in the next one.